An ancient quest for vengeance. A man who wants to rule the world. Or simply, swords, magic, and babes. All this can only mean one thing. We're comparing Conan the Barbarian on this episode of Retro vs. Remake.
I'm Reggie Parker.
And I'm Dan Bulick. Welcome to another episode of
Retro
versus Remake. The series where we discuss films and their remakes. Join us as we ask the question, should this remake exist? Today's episode, Conan the Barbarian. So let's jump right into it. Conan the Barbarian, 1982, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, James Earl Jones, Sandal Bergman, Jerry Lopez, Max von Sydow. Is that how you say his name?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Okay. And Mako Iwamatsu. Directed by John Milius. And just put some films you may have seen, or some stuff he did. He did the Red Dawn, the original Red Dawn, which we're going to have to eventually do because they made a remake of that too. And he also was co-creator of the Rome series. I don't know if you've seen that. That's a series I definitely enjoyed. Got rushed during season 2, unfortunately, though. Screenplay by Oliver Stone, but rewritten by John Milius. And music by Basil Poledouris. And I just put a film that he's notorious for is RoboCop. I love the soundtrack to RoboCop, and that's another episode we're going to have to do one day. All right. Conan the Barbarian, 2011, starring Jason Momoa, Rachel Nicholas, Stephen Lang, Rose McGowan, Nonso Anozie, Ron Perlman, and Morgan Freeman. Directed by Marcus Mispel. And he's not really known for directing movies, but he has directed a few music videos. So I put some of the hits that people might know. So CNC Music Factory, Gonna Make You Sweat, Everybody Dance Now, excellent. No Doubt, Spiderwebs, Gloria Estefan, Turn the Beat Around, and of course, Spice Girls, Spice Up Your Life. Wow. This is the man who's directing this Conan movie. So take that, do that with whatever you want. Screenplay by Thomas Dean Donnelly, Joshua Oppenheimer, and Sean Hood. Yes, 3 different writers for this one. And music by Tyler Bates. I just want to say that both films are based on the character written by Robert E. Howard in 1932. So the remake isn't exactly a remake because it's not based on that original Arnold film. It's more based just on the character, and then they kind of took liberties. The original did too. They took a lot of liberties, and they sort of combined other characters that Robert E. Howard made in the past too. So none of these are really based on specifically a specific thing. They kind of took where they wanted to for both of these films. What is your first experience with either film?
First experience with the Arnold film was definitely in college. I don't know if you remember, there was a video that came out that was basically Conan the Barbarian as a musical. That's on YouTube if you want to check it out. And
I haven't seen that one. I saw the Predator musical.
Oh, that's great.
Though. So I didn't see the.
It's exactly like that. So we watched that on YouTube and had like a Conan sort of movie night a few weeks after that. So I've definitely seen that film at least a few times in my life. And the remake, it's possible that I'd seen it at some point because, like 300 and things like that were popular at the time. We did like Clash of the Titans, but I don't recall seeing it. So I think this is my first time.
This is my first time seeing either film. I have never seen the original Conan the Barbarian. I've seen clips of it. And, I know it's like the movie that got Arnold's kind of in the stratosphere and like launched his career, but I've never seen it, never had any particular interest in seeing it. I was like, I think I get it. And, well, now I know, yep. Reggie. Now I know everything.
Welcome to the fold.
Except I didn't, thank you. I didn't see Destroyer, though. I don't know if I want to see that one. But, yeah, so I'm coming to this with fresh eyes.
There you go.
And these are very different films, like I said before. So before we get into the differences, my synopsis here is very brief because there's not much that's similar except that there's a guy named Conan. And he wants vengeance. That's kind of the only similarity in both films. But let's see what I came up with. So here we go. Conan's parents were murdered when he was a child. His father's sword was even taken by the murderer. Eventually, he grows up seeking vengeance for the murders. Along the way, there's lots of action and sex. He gets allies occasionally. He finds the man responsible for his vengeance. He vows to face him alone. Lots of action ensues. He fails. He goes and he fights him again. Lots of more action ensues. Conan eventually wins. The end. Yeah, so it's it's a very brief synopsis, but let's face it, I don't think these Conan movies are known for their deep plots. So
I think you got it.
I think it's a pretty easy story to follow. I mean, I don't think anybody's gonna be complaining when they listen to this. But they are very different films. Like I said, really the only thing that's similar is that there's a guy named Conan in it. So maybe we can focus on that for our first talking point, the Conans.
Yeah.
Differences there, and then kind of branch off and talk about whatever.
That makes sense.
Cool. So just start off, we have our Conan, just Conan, no other names, portrayed by Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 1982 film.
Slave. Barbarian. Warrior.
And Jason Momoa in the 2011 film.
Run from me, and I will tear apart the monster to find you. I will follow you to hell.
All right. I guess the best place to start with our Conans is sort of their childhood. Both films start there with the young Conan, so at least there's one similar thing happening in both films. The original Conan, we meet him, he's already, I don't know, maybe 5, 6. He's already a child, he's not a baby still. But that's not the case in the remake.
No.
Where do you want to start there?
Well, in the remake, Conan hasn't even been born yet, really, at the beginning of the film. His pregnant mother is in the middle of some epic battle and gets stabbed. And this Conan is not born like a typical man. He's born of blood because he was a battle-born Conan.
So that means he's violent, right? That's what that means.
He's destined for greatness of some sort because of his violent birth, and that definitely is a big plot point for this Conan starting out.
It's a little ahead of their time with a C-section being performed on the battlefield there by the father, nonetheless.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting way to present the character. It sort of puts him in that sort of myth and lore aspect of what these films go for. I don't know. I sort of would rather get to see my character when it kind of matters a little bit. I don't know. It's such a weird choice because I don't think I've ever seen that in a film to have your character being born in a fight and then, like you said, the battlefield C-section. I don't know. It's like I like the voiceover in the lore of it because it feels like we're jumping right into the action. But there's something to be said about the original. Just all right, he's an age, and we can relate to a young child and his father. Yeah.
When you think about it, it's pretty dumb that's how they had to do it. But I guess they're going for like, what's the most metal way that Conan could be born? In the middle of a battlefield. This is Conan. So I think I understand why they did what they did, but it's pretty silly. At the end of it. Like, she's fighting by herself for some reason. I guess I'll leave my pregnant wife to fight for herself. The husband's there, portrayed by Ron Perlman, and he's not protecting her. And, this woman is 9 months pregnant, and, I don't know, but I'm going to assume it's pretty difficult to fight in a war when you're 9 months pregnant. So I think somebody would be helping her, but she's pretty much fending for herself, and she does get stabbed, and Conan has to be born somehow. So we got to cut into her. I do like what you said, like kind of like broadens the myth. Like, this man was born in battle. Like, that's a cool thing. But when you actually see it happening, it does like, that's a little silly.
And I mean,
so
and when you say see it, I mean, you get to see it. They go through the effort of like CGI-ing like the womb, the baby next to the blade, and like it just, like you said, like I do like the myth, and like it feels like one of those things where like you're swinging a beer in like a pub, and it's like, yeah, and then Conan, like, it was just fucking crazy. This guy came out of nowhere. He was 7 feet tall, and like it just makes him more, like you said, metal and more epic. But I I don't know, the logistics. I think they should have probably just like glossed over it a little bit more. But it does sort of start to bring us to one of our actual big differences of these Conans, because he's so metal. And this young Conan is a lot more violent than the other young Conan. The original film, you know, you see the father, and he's talking to his son about, you know, what is best in life, and well, we're not there yet. Sorry. he's talking to his son about you know, battle and just like his general philosophy on the world, and how, I don't know, it's just a much more calm setting, so that when we get into sort of the violence that you see in both films of both these young Conans lose their parents, as you said in the synopsis, and the way you see it in the original film, you're kind of going from this sort of serene, sort of peacetime aspect for Conan, and then seeing him thrust into violence, whereas the remake is just like, you don't even get a chance to be born before you're in a fight. It's like epic, but I have no backdrop for it, and like the film is constantly like, I guess that's part of it, like they're like a warring sort of barbarian tribe, but like from the jump, it's just like, let's go. And I think there is something to be said about the original sort of easing you into the scenario. It's a little bit more relatable, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely a lot more relatable. And I don't know if we're supposed to feel anything, because like that's when we first meet the mom in the remake, and it's like, are we supposed to be sad that she's dying? We don't really know who this character is at all. Right. And it's like, she's never brought up again. Nope. It's like the dad's never like, man, I miss your mom, or anything like that. So at least in the original, like Conan spends a little bit of time with both of his parents before they're taken from him, so we know he has a connection with them. I mean, he does spend time with the dad, obviously, as we'll get to, but I guess overall it's a little more absurd than it is cool. What happens in the remake.
Yeah, it's like aspects of it are cool, but then like I said, we're kind of pointing out the sort of goofy parts that they chose to include. I think that there was a way to do that without it being like, I think honestly, just cutting out like the CGI baby part would probably help you, because like it's just weird that they felt the need to animate that. You know, it's just like you get the same effect if she gets stabbed in the field and then Ron Perlman shows up. So, like I said, it's just doing this quick, like just you're in it, dude. Like, and they just try to whip you right into it. And I think they were better off sort of slowing it down a little bit.
Yeah, it is absurd. It's like the first thing, before Conan even saw another human, he saw a sword in his mother's belly while he was there. Metal Conan. Yeah. It's wow. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but you know, granted the source material, it's not like, wow, I can't get into this movie now because that was just so stupid. It's like, all right, this is the kind of movie we're in. You know, I know the original source material, so it's not too far removed from that absurd world of this aggressive violence that we're going to enter in moments, because when he's still a kid in the remake, he's pretty violent.
Yes.
Too. And should we move on to the older Conan?
Yeah, I think so. I do want to say, I know it's a line in the remake, and I can't quite place it. I don't have it in my notes. I think his friend at one point says, you know, most men were born of like their mother's like breasts, or, you know, and Conan was born of like blood. So like, they really want you to see that distinction, that normal guys get born the old-fashioned way. This Conan guy is like badass. And to your point, when you're talking about the young Conan in the remake, that trend continues.
That trend continues when he's a kid, but I don't really get that vibe from the adult Conan so much. That he's this like kind of bloodthirsty, like need to fight all the time kind of guy. He definitely is a lot more laid back as an adult. Definitely more Momoa, more that influence there. I'd say, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I'd say like Arnold kind of represents that. Like if you told me like which one of these guys do you think was born of their mother like on a battlefield, it'd be like that guy. Definitely that guy. Pointing at Arnold. So while it does continue when we see adolescent Conan, I don't think it carries throughout the rest of the film.
I think that what could account for that is sort of the main difference that we have between these two Conans, is that the father is still there and is sort of trying to teach him that lesson because he's saying like you're not ready for the sword because he's all fire, as we'll get to, and no ice.
No ice.
It's like, I guess to even start talking about that. So the difference between both our Conans in the original film, moments after that introduction to the father and his sort of philosophy on life, their village is sort of immediately attacked by a horde that includes the big bad, which we'll get into. And right there in that moment, his father's killed, and then his mother's head is literally lopped off while he's
right in front of him.
He's still holding her hand when her sort of body falls. And it's, again, like that type of scenery actually, I think, is more powerful than the Born in Blood scene. It's like they're kind of the equivalent in a way, but like you don't see the gruesome thing. You just see, boom, you hear the head fall. You see like her no longer grasping his hand. And it's like, that's a powerful moment to me, and sort of shows this like kind of tragic pathway that Conan's going to have to go through as a youth. So although we don't see a lot of that youth, which is changed completely in a remake, you kind of get it. Like you said, like you get why he's sort of motivated in that moment, in this sort of formative moment in his life that his parents were violently taken from him, and it sort of started to forge his pathway.
Yeah, he was there when his mom died in the original, but they kind of did that with his dad in the remake. Like he was there to try his best to save him. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk a little bit about that remake Conan before he witnessed his dad's death. So like you said, in the original Conan, he's kind of this normal kid, witnesses his parents' death. In the remake, we don't kind of have a normal Conan. We kind of have this psycho Conan who's like amazingly violent and powerful.
Yeah.
Some reason, I guess there's like, they're trying to recruit the youth, I guess, to join their army. That's what I'm assuming. And then there's a test they have to pass. They have to do something with like an egg in their mouth, and if they come back and the egg isn't hatched or cracked, then they can join them in the battle. Yeah, is kind of what I got.
Yeah, like sort of my take on it was like that was kind of like a rite of passage, for this sort of warrior class or like warrior tribe, of barbarians. In that little exchange before it ramps up quite a bit, but in that little exchange, when you first see Conan as like a young Conan, you notice that he hasn't done his chores, and his father's kind of getting him on that, but he still lets him do the egg challenge, as it were, hashtag egg challenge. And it is sort of that balance that we were talking about, the fire and ice, where you have this delicate thing, this egg, that you have to not have crack while you're doing all this violent stuff, because they're basically like kicking each other's asses as they're running up this hill, and like it's kind of like a nuts exchange. But I do appreciate, again, them showing this sort of violent beginning, and like even the children are sort of part of that.
Okay, and then so there's this challenge. I don't exactly know what they're doing. I know they have the eggs and they have to return with the egg uncracked, but are they supposed to get something, or are they just supposed to fight each other? I wasn't clear to the purpose of it.
Yeah, it just seemed like it's one of those weird things. First one up the hill and back with the egg wins, and it's, I guess, supposed to teach you a lesson, rite of passage stuff.
So they're doing this. There's a bunch of the kids, and then Conan, like you said, he shows up at the end. He's like, well, can I go too? He's like, all right, fine, why not? Here's an egg. And then they go, and while they're running and they're all fighting each other, like you said, all of a sudden there's these other like 4, I guess, just wild enemies, random enemies that are wanting to kill them, and every kid just like, all right, see ya. This is not worth it, but not Conan. Conan's like, I think I could take them. And I'll be damned if that little kid doesn't kill those 4 adult men in cold blood.
Violently.
And then sever all of their heads and return with the egg uncracked.
That's right.
I mean, damn.
Where's this egg, dude? Because he's doing a lot of screaming and like, yelling. It's like, I don't see the egg. It's like I saw the baby in the womb, but I'm not seeing this egg. It's a absurd but cool sequence, which I think that may be a trend that we were going to say a few times for this film. But it starts in that sort of scrum of them running up the hill, and they're like throwing each other in the trees and stuff like that, and then it continues to this like little like 11, 12 tops. I'm giving you like this guy's age. And
Yeah.
he's doing backflips. He's slamming people's heads in the stones. He's like slamming them in the trees, killing guys, chopping their heads off, crushing their skulls with rocks. Like, there's only 4 guys. I think I described 7 different ways people got killed. And then, like, he's just, like you say, he's this crazy, blood-curdling youth that just screams his way into a scenario that is unwinnable, and he wins. And he brings back the heads, and he's got the bloody face, and the entire village of tough guy barbarians is recoiling in horror as a small child. I can't believe we're describing the film. As a small child, just drops these like enemy heads at his father's feet. It's like, what now? You know?
Yeah, it was pretty insane, but I'd say like that hooked me. I was like, this is very different, and I enjoyed it. It was a good action sequence. You know, it was absurd, and but you kind of expect it going into a Conan movie. So I enjoyed that whole sequence. Yeah. I was just like, oh, I couldn't believe what was happening. It was pretty cool.
Totally. Again, this movie sets its tone. It tells you exactly what you're getting into. So if you didn't get it in the first scene and this isn't for you in the second scene, trust me, they're not going to really put the brakes on after this. So it's wild, dude. It's a wild, cool sort of intro to this character. And, as that sort of continues, his father in the very next scene sees him like swing his sword around. He's yelling. He's violent. He's starting to try to teach him like about kind of balance, because this Conan is very unbalanced at this point in his life.
He's very much the fire, and his dad's trying to get that ice idea in his head. Fire and ice. He forges a sword. He's like, what's the most important part of it? The fire or the ice? He's like, fire? Ice? He's like, foolish boy, it's both.
Trick question.
It's like, oh, man. Damn it. And then I guess shortly after that is when the village gets attacked, and then pretty much everybody dies.
Yeah.
Except for Conan. And that's when we kind of learn also about the plot.
Yes. That is
the remake.
That is a good point, that the plot does begin after these sequences. It's cool. Like, it's kind of the equivalent of the first movie where the dad's like has his own philosophy, his own sort of fire and ice, steel and man sort of situation. And this remake has the same thing. Perlman trains him for like a little bit, like you said, and they just kind of, we got a battle now. I think what's kind of epic about that scene is sort of his equivalent of the parent getting the head lopped off is he has to like keep this like forge above his father. He gets to see his father killed, like it's like he's involved in the act. It's pretty wild. And actually not a bad springboard for the plot, I guess.
No, it's not too bad at all, because like you said, he's involved. So it's like he could almost grow up with like, man, if only I was stronger, I could have done something to save him. So it's this chip on his shoulder that the movie doesn't really address the rest of the movie. Sure. But it was there. They could have like built on that. Man, if I was only stronger, I could have saved my father, maybe saved more people in the village. But it's still pretty horrific to be there while your dad dies, I guess. Yeah. So still it's pretty intense stuff in that remake. Yeah, but no, you bring up a good point that could have been played back, because when you do get to the big bad, they meet multiple times, and like that interaction is referenced with actually several characters in the film. You would think that maybe they would have like mentioned, it's like, oh, you were weak then, you're weak now, like you said, and I think it would, as a motivator, I think that would have made sense. But it's sort of like a missed opportunity that doesn't hurt much, but like it would have been nice to see it in the film. We also forgot to mention before Conan is sort of struggling there to save his dad, he does cut a dude's nose off.
He does, yeah.
Another violent scene there, who's an important character later in the remake.
Yeah, that's true. Can't forget that he does like maim a few people, because he even gets a cut off on the ear of the bad guy. So the kid, maybe they should just have like a bunch of those kids like around, because
just need a bunch of kids born in battle. All right, all of the pregnant women go to the front line. Right. It's okay if you die. We'll get your baby out.
Yeah. To your point, do we want to talk about the father before we talk about the bad guy?
I mean, yeah, go into the father a little bit more, and then we can go into the bad guy before going into more of Conan's life.
Yeah, because we're right there. We're like teetering on this edge of what sort of the inciting incident in both films are, because they are major characters, despite screen time for some of them. The father is an important figure in both films. Conan's father in the original, William Smith, we don't spend very much screen. He basically does that fatherly thing of, and never forget, son, and cut down in battle afterwards.
Yeah.
But Ron Perlman is much more of a major figure before the movie really starts to catch. And I think that along the lines of what we were saying is he has the tragic sort of situation of having lost his wife, and now he's raising his son. He's trying to teach his son about balance in his life in a way that I think, again, it feels like a lot of this groundwork, like you said, is being made in these scenes that should have played out a little bit more in the end game. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but it just felt like we spent so much time with Ron Perlman and his lessons, that it shouldn't have come back.
Yeah, it's never really addressed again. You could almost come into the movie after his dad dies, and you really wouldn't miss too much when it comes to plot, because it's never. I can't really recall him ever like referencing his father, and maybe he said it like why he wants to go after the big baddie, but like the lessons that his father taught him, certainly I don't remember him using any of those lessons or really incorporating that ice into his fire too much.
No, you don't see that, but I guess the surrogate for that in the film is the sword. I guess the sword has a little bit more, Conan's sword has a little bit more significant. Well, actually, no, that's not true. They're both very significant swords. The sword in the remake has this origin through his father, and it was forged in that fire and ice. It's sort of incorporating lessons in the fact that the big bad could even like get his hands on his father's sword. That's a point of contention for him as well. So,
well, wasn't that in both movies?
It is like it's Crom's sword though, right? It's Crom is a.
I don't know now.
Oh shit! Because I thought he got his sword from Crom's crypt at one point.
Oh no, but like his dad still had a sword that was taken from him when he was young. But yeah, he found a sword later and when he was an adult. But his dad's sword was still taken when he was a child in the original. That's what I was.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I don't want to get lost now. Is that the sword he tries to retrieve though later on?
He eventually does get it back. And I think it is the sword he uses ultimately to end Doom.
Okay.
At the end of the movie. So yeah, hold on. See, look, I got it in the synopsis right here. Conan's father is killed by dogs, and his sword is taken by Doom to decapitate Conan's mother. Yeah, so he does take a sword from Conan's youth, which Conan later does claim.
So, no, I mean that makes sense. So.
And then it says right here in the original, the battle ends with Conan having recovered his father's sword from his enemies, a sword splintered by his own hand in battle. So he does get it back. Okay.
What I do like about sort of the Perlman character, like we are missing his lessons later in the film, but we do get sort of this added, not significance, but just added time with his father's sword and sort of the origins of his father's sword in the remake that aren't quite as apparent in the original.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's kind of the same thing. Like your dad's sword was taken and you get it back at the end. It's definitely harder to spot in the original. Like if you blink and you miss it. It's like I was like, wait, he got the sword back? He lost the sword and he got it back. I didn't even know that. Like I really didn't know that happened in the original until I reread the synopsis on Wikipedia. So it's definitely more apparent in the remake that this sword is pretty important and he needs to get his dad's sword back.
Yeah, and to that point, it's like the fact that we even sort of end in the same sort of place with the same motivation does show you that the inclusion of Ron Perlman, I feel, is good for the film, and like it's good to flesh out his youth a little bit more. But I just, like we were saying, I wish that had been a sort of lasting effect on the film. Overall, we don't see William Smith much. We see a lot more Ron Perlman, but because of the nature of the films, I think they're plot-wise equivalent. It's an equivalent scenario.
Yeah. Because like we actually see like Conan in the remake, like doing like physical stuff, like actually like training to become a warrior. Like I'll give a little bit more points to the remake because like I'm actually seeing like Conan learn how to fight as a youth in the remake as opposed to the original where he doesn't fight at all until he's an adult.
Yeah, the action sort of scenes in the remake in his youth show you these early origins of this blood-born battle maniac. The original, they just kind of, and then he's fighting guys, and he read some books and banged some ladies.
Yeah. Well, we're getting ahead because we just wanted to talk about the dads. Should we just talk about the big baddies first before we get into adult Conan?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So our big bads, we have Thulsa Doom, played by James Earl Jones, wearing blue contacts, which is weird for me.
Now they will know why they are afraid of the dark. Now they will learn why to fear the night.
And then we have Kalar Zim, played by Stephen Lang in the remake.
Behold! In despair! Your new master!
And they're very different villains, and they have very different motivations for, I guess, their evil ways. Right. Do you want to start with what Thulsa Doom exactly is? Because I had a little trouble figuring out his motivation as opposed to Zim's.
Yeah, let me try this. Okay.
So, I was like, what is his deal? All right, go.
So yeah, I think you're kind of hitting on the point that there's not really a point, is there? It's also through like he's just more or less a cult leader. You know, he roams the land and pretty much does what he wants and gets more followers, and anyone that stands in his way, he'll dispel of them, whatever it takes. So we don't get a lot of the motivation of why he's doing anything that he's doing, but we do get to see a lot of how it works. You know, like we actually get to see, all right, so you got this religious cult, snake gods, and all that stuff, and you are able to convince people to follow you and fight for you, and that's his greatest power. Besides some cool little magic trickery from time to time.
He's evil, a sorcerer who can summon demons.
So he's pretty much this guy who's like had a lot of power for a long time. Like he said in one point in the movie, like for thousands of years. So like he's 1,000 years old at least. That wasn't just like a thing he was saying. Okay, so he just has this power. He's just conquering people, getting followers, like you said, and then just doing whatever he can to keep that power.
Pretty much. I mean, that seems to be it. Though we don't get his motivation, we do get some of his ideology, and I guess would be sort of an iconic scene is when he talks about the strength of the flesh versus steel. And he says, you know, like these barbarians live by the sword. If I can kill you or not, if I can convince other people to do my bidding, then I'm more or less all powerful, is sort of his take. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not very well described, but neither is any of the magic in any of the films. Why he could be that old, but I guess whatever power his snake god.
Snake power.
Yeah. You know, without getting too deep into it, but like in that film, gods are important and everyone sort of has their own gods. I guess that's his motivation. He's worshiping his god, and that's what his god wants him to do. Go take over villages and get more slaves.
Yeah, I was just a little confused. I was like, okay, this guy's pretty powerful. I was just trying to figure out what his deal was, and yeah, he was able to make somebody jump to their death, which is okay. That's definitely a display of power that most cult leaders can probably do. I wasn't sure if he was trying to get more powerful or if he just wasn't powerful enough. I was a little confused. I know I'm looking a little deep into Conan the Barbarian here, but you gotta forgive me. First time viewer, I was trying to find my footing, like where everybody was, you know. So I was trying to place Doom. You know, it's a cool name. You got Doom. You got a Doom cult. You got a mountain of Doom. You know, it's very cool with the Doom thing. But I was just like, what's your deal, man?
Nah, like you said, it's good branding, which I think that's sort of the key. Like,
oh, so merchandising. This is a Spaceballs thing. Exactly.
You're right. You're hitting the nail on the head. We don't know what his deal is. It's unknown to us. It reminds me of another great film that I like, the Street Fighter the movie, when Bison is like, "Oh, for you, this is the worst day of your life," but for me, it was Tuesday. It was Tuesday. He's toast to doom. He's killing this guy. He's, that lady's jumping. It's the way it's always been for 1,000 years, man.
All right, so not necessarily trying to get any more power, just trying to keep the status quo.
Yeah.
I guess is what we're doing in the original, as opposed to the remake, where we have a much different villain and much different villain motivation. Like I said, Kalar Zim, his motivation is not to maintain power, but to get more power. Because we have a new thing in the remake. We have this mask that, if as Morgan Freeman described in the voiceover in the beginning of the film, was a powerful mask that somebody had and needed to be destroyed. So all the barbarians destroyed it, and it was broken into, I don't know, 6 pieces? Maybe. It doesn't matter. It was broken up into many pieces, distributed among the barbarian leaders, I suppose you could say. And now this Zim guy wants to put all those pieces back together, but not just for the acquisition of power, because he wants to get back his lost wife, his dead wife that was murdered wrongfully as a witch, which
Right.
she was. And it didn't seem like she was a good witch either. But she was murdered, and he wants to bring her back. So there, at least, is a little bit of motivation. I figured out his deal in the movie. I don't know if you had anything to say about that.
No, you're right. This is, I believe, the second film in a row that we watched with Morgan Freeman voiceover intro. But it does a good job. Like you said, you know why the guy wants the 6 or 7 shards. I don't remember the number either.
It doesn't matter.
I just love it's like, really? Here's a shard. It's like that. There's a little bit of stuff in front of the screen. Then you see the screen wipe of like the guy riding his horse in a different direction with a shard. It's ridiculous. But yeah, they got these shards, and with he has powers that are defined, definitely.
Are they? Do we ever learn what these powers are?
No, I don't think we necessarily know what the powers are. I do think what we do know is allegedly, and even another character that we'll get to, it's up in the air whether or not that's going to work either, to be honest. But like you said, he wants to bring back his dead wife because, from what I understand, because he keeps talking about it in the film, her witch powers allowed him to get more power, and he misses having that power and wants it back, and that's his central motivation.
Zim wasn't just... Well, he was originally a bandit leader, I guess, when he killed Conan's dad, and then he became a king later, I believe, right?
Yes.
That's kind of what I got from the remake. Okay. And he was accompanied by his daughter. I'm just going to throw her out there right now. Marique, or... I don't know exactly how you say her name. But she's a witch, portrayed by Rose McGowan, very much in the similar vein of her mother. Very similar to her mother.
Yeah, well.
As we'll get in some uncomfortable moments later.
Mm-hmm.
And she's aiding her father in this quest, which I'm going to assume not just to bring the mom back, but just to rule the world, probably, because it seems pretty bad, and people seem to want to stop him from putting this mask together. Because it's not just the mask, Reggie. We need one more ingredient that Morgan Freeman did not say in the opening voiceover. Yeah. It's not just about the mask. You need the pure blood.
Right.
The descendant of a pure blood. Whatever the fuck that means. I don't know.
Pure Aragonian blood or something like that. Yeah.
Sure. Well, sure. Why not? And there's only one person in the entire world that has that blood. So that's their quest. Because they already got the last mask piece from Conan's dad, who didn't really do much to hide it. He's like, they must hide it here because this is the place they worship. Well, why would you hide it there? That's what they knew to look there. God, that was stupid. And then you put it in this random box that was barely buried, like, it's 2 inches in the ground. It's like, oh, God. But that's whatever. You know, they had to find it somehow.
Yeah.
And it's not just the mask. You need that pure blood because otherwise you just have this stupid-looking mask on your face.
That's true.
Which we will see later.
Yeah, and that is a good point. They kind of give you the old blood ritual switcheroo a little late in the film. I didn't know that was part of it. I thought, like if I was in a meeting for like what's going on in the film, I would have said, so we're just the mask, right? And they're like, no, actually, It's a trick question. It's the fire and the ice. You need both.
There you go. The whole remake's full of trick questions.
Yeah, because when he's describing the time of his wife before, I was under the impression that things were better and he's been reduced to being a bandit. So I guess he wants to go back to being like a tough king type dude with the same magic power, I guess. Yeah, he knows a lot about these barbarians. Not only does, and like you said, we'll get to it, his daughter have the ability to sort of sniff out pretty much any sort of random magic they need at any given time. He also knows a lot about their ways. So this guy he's sort of keyed into barbarians and how they work, where they would hide things and, their weaknesses. So I guess in that vein, a pretty good bad guy because he's got like all the answers versus the hero's strengths.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. And he gets a lot more screen time than James Earl Jones too. Like James Earl Jones is in the beginning, and then he's a little bit more towards the end. Like there's a whole chunk of the movie where you don't even see his character. At least the remake, they show us what Zim's going through and like just what he's talking about with his daughter. Some awkward conversations there.
Yeah.
just trying to find that pure blood. Got to find that pure blood, Reggie.
Yeah.
So Stephen Lang, I feel like he has a little bit more to do than James Earl Jones.
Yeah, and you kind of have more of a parallel between our protagonist and antagonist in this scenario, where they're both very sort of singularly minded people. I mean, at the end of the day, really, for both of them, this is about revenge. Zim is trying to take power to, I guess, enact it, but it's basically like, you guys screwed me over. I'm back and I'm better than ever. And Conan is like, this guy killed my dad. I'm going to kill him. And everyone's motivation is clearly defined. In the original, Conan obviously wants to kill Tulsa Doom, but also, like you said, I don't really know what he wants. And to your point, he's not in the film as much as you would expect from like your main villain. And
I don't exactly know the extent to Tulsa Doom's powers. Like, we know he does deal with magic. We saw that. Just gonna jump ahead here when he turns to a snake.
Yes.
Which didn't really do anything. I don't know. He turned into a snake to escape, and we don't see that ever happen again.
He's evil, a sorcerer who can summon demons.
And it's never brought up. It's not like Conan's fighting a big snake at the end of the movie. So he can turn into a snake.
Yep.
That's all I got.
He
could shoot. He could turn snakes into arrows.
Right. You could just get arrows.
Or you could just get arrows, but no, we're going to use magic and we're going to turn snakes into arrows.
It was pretty cool.
I didn't even realize it was snakes. I
just read
it in the synopsis.
Snake bite.
Yeah, because I don't understand the character and his motivations, and I don't even understand the extent of his power, other than, he clearly has this, like you said, this cult leader sort of hold on people.
Right.
He can kind of command them to do whatever he wants at their whim. But I don't know if you need magic to do that. In modern day, I'll show you plenty of cults with some random idiots. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to give a little more points to Zim, even though it's kind of stupid. It's still kind of stupid, but at least I understand his motivation.
Yeah, and I feel it gets stupid mostly at the end. It's
you're right.
It's pretty okay until it gets really stupid.
But it's kind of when he gets that mask on at the end. And I'm just like, well, that looks pretty stupid. What's the point of this?
Yeah, the mask was we'll get to the ending later, but like the mask was dumb and I hated it. And
mask was dumb, and I'll say overall that the remake does have some pretty good CGI, but that mask was awful.
It was pretty bad.
It looked like, I guess they didn't spend any of their money there, because it just looked so bad and out of place, and it was like, I don't know, it was like they didn't finish rendering it or something.
Yeah,
it looked like it was still buffering. It looked pretty awful.
When it got wiggly, I was like, I'm out.
Yeah, it's like, can't we just have the mask? Does it have to like have these moving pieces that like wrap around your head? It's like, can it just be a mask, man?
I wish it was just a mask, because they got really dumb in that moment. You're right. I think that he does a better job of establishing his badness. Really, the only reason to have the James Earl Jones villain to have the staff of the serpent staff is probably more important to the story than the actual villain, because it lets Conan know like this guy's symbol. So again, the guy's marketing is his undoing, as we found out.
Oh yeah, the Doom, the guy whose name is Doom, and he lives on Doom,
Yeah.
and leaves the cult of Doom. And yeah, I know that.
Turns into snake, has a snake staff. Yeah, snakes and Doom. Yeah. Points to the remake in this regard. The remake's doing a lot of. I would say early on, I think the remake is actually getting a lot of points. We didn't really say how we thought about the young Conan, but I would say the young Conan in the remake also points in that direction because he's established. I understand him. I understand his flaws. I understand his dad. I understand his villain. So very early on, the remake is in the lead, as far as I'm concerned. But things can change.
Things can change. I think we should go on to, because we got our villain here. We talked about the dads. I think we should just keep going with Conan and talk about that. So very different things happen after Conan's parents are dead in both films. In the original, Conan's immediately taken as a slave, right? So we got young Conan, and then he's sort of put to this, what would you call it, Reggie, a wheel or something? This wooden thing that looks kind of like an ancient oil rig almost, where he just goes around in circles pushing a large piece of lumber as a slave,
which gets him really, really large, by the way.
Slave.
Yeah. Fuck CrossFit. You just need to push this piece of wood.
I don't know if it's a salt mine. I don't know if it's a sand thing. I don't know. It's menial labor, and he's going to be the slave to do it. But he pushes a big wheel like for a decent amount of his life.
I don't know what that is. It just reminded me, I'm sure the Simpsons took it from here, but like there's this one episode where Homer has to like push this huge ass wheel thing, and then what it turns out to be is just like what's turning the cupcake in a display case. so that's where my head went. I'm sure this is where the Simpsons got it from, because Homer's getting whipped as he's turning it too. It's fantastic. But yeah, I have no idea what this device is and why they're making him do it, but they're making him do it, and they're making him do it for a long time. We see seasons pass, different parts of the year. Then he's obviously an adult. We see Conan become Arnold, and then after that, for some reason, they decide, you know what? You're pretty big. You're gonna be a gladiator now. So he's a gladiator. He has no experience fighting. He's been pushing this fucking piece of wood for, I'm gonna say 20 years. Sure. That's it. But he's a natural. The guy knows how to fight, and he's just rocking everybody. He's not even getting hit, or maybe he's getting. No, I'm sorry, he is getting hit because we have these amazing ADR lines of Arnold doing this amazing.
There's so much of it,
which is there's a lot of bad ADR in the original Conan. A lot of it. It's great, and yeah, he's really good as a gladiator. And I'm a big fan of the Spartacus series that was on Starz. And, I know a little bit about Roman gladiators, and, like, you can earn your freedom if you win enough. But that's not the case in this Conan movie. He's just let go for some reason, and he's a free man. I didn't understand that.
Yeah. Well, he's just let go, and they're kind of cool with him, too. Like his life gets awesome. His life...
Oh, yeah. Before that, yeah. Go on.
I mean, so, like you said, they don't really explain why he can fight, and I assume that he got big because he pushed the wheel, even though all the other slaves are all shriveled up and malnourished. But this guy, he's thriving in any scenario. The fights are ridiculous. The ADR is ridiculous. But then, like, as he's getting better, like, they teach him how to read and write. They teach him more ways to kill people.
Different types of arts
from the East.
The art of fighting. I feel from the Orient. The secrets of the Orient, and now he will learn.
So, he learns all kinds of cool, he learns a bunch of cool stuff, gets prostitutes thrown in his cage.
They put him out to stud, is how I think they put it. And in a hilarious scene where the woman is terrified of this huge Arnold, and then she's like, he's like, here's a blanket. It's okay. Now I can bang you. It's
these dudes are just, watching.
It is absurd. Yeah, and there's a ton of people just watching. It is absurd. There's no other way to describe what's happening here.
Yeah, it's it's absurd, but it's designed to sort of explain this barbarian king. From what I understand from the source material, that Conan's a little bit more talkative and sort of nuanced, from what I understand. So
Oh, is he? You wouldn't get that from the original film where Arnold barely
yeah,
talks.
I think that's just a Arnold thing.
Yeah, he was originally supposed to do the voiceover in the original, but they were like, "Whoa, that accent's a
Yeah.
little too thick, buddy. Let's get Mako to do it." Yeah, Mako, do the voiceover.
That's
here.
hilarious. It is absurd. I guess I like that we get to see more of, I guess, his late origin, as it were, than his youth origin. Like, I get it. Like, he was enslaved and he wants revenge, so that stuff helps. Whereas I feel like in a remake, once we get out of the kid part, they're just kind of like, and I'm old. like,
Yeah.
like I've been doing stuff, and I'm here. I am like freeing the slaves. I don't know, like completely different sort of slave freeing in this remake.
It's definitely different. I mean, I didn't mind it so much though, because it's like you said, or like I said, it's like he's pushing this wheel, and all of a sudden he knows how to fight as a gladiator, and then he's just released to be free. It's like these things didn't make sense to me. I know I'm reading a lot into this Conan the Barbarian movie, but it's like, well, why would you make him a gladiator and then just let him go? It's like, at least let him like fight for his freedom or something, you know, or just like some great mad escape or something. But no, he just kind of, hey, go be free. Okay, I will. It's like, all right. At least like with the remake, it's like after his dad dies, he doesn't become a slave. He's sort of like surviving on his own, doing whatever he has to do. He's like a thief, or sort of a gun for hire, I guess, if you will, just doing whatever he can to survive. So he's still kind of fighting. It's more believable that he would have those skills of a warrior as an adult, as opposed to a guy that was just pushing a wheel, forced to become a gladiator. It just happened to be good and then got released. Like, I just didn't like the origin story in the or the coming of age story, I guess, in the original. As opposed to the remake, it made sense. Like, okay, we're just gonna jump cut because, like, you know, he's a good warrior as a kid, so you can just extrapolate that now because now he's an adult and he's been doing that since. He hasn't been a slave.
I think from my research as well, like that just technically as well just wouldn't happen to that character. Like that character would not accept servitude, basically. So it is a strange inclusion. I get what they're trying to do. You know, this is how he got his freedom. This is how he like got different skills. So, you know, they're trying to show his skills, but you're right. The original does a better job of establishing how he got to be a warrior versus the original where things happen and he got big and here he is and he's the man. But they don't really explain why any of that would actually happen.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, well, you see how big he is, right? Yeah, that's why he's good at fighting, because he's that big. And it's like, all right, I guess. But it's like, you know, the guy was pushing this wheel for 20 years. It's like, I don't know if that would make him a good fighter. And you know, I understand it's Conan. You don't have to really get into it, but I guess it just makes a little more sense in the remake.
Yeah, I mean, in both films, he's kind of like the chosen one. Like, he's able to recover Crum's sword in the original. And in the remake, he's bloodborne, battleborn, all that stuff. So they get their own unique ways. The remake definitely does it in a more cohesive. It makes a lot more sense how he gets there. But I don't know. Yeah, I think you're supposed to just kind of gloss over it.
Exactly. I think you're not supposed to think too hard about that original film, because if you start asking questions, you're not going to have a good time. And there is a good time to be had in that original film as long as you're not asking too many questions.
I think that is the prerequisite. If you're trying to look for like high art or, you know, a more realistic take on sword and sandals, no, not happening. Yeah. This is an epic. You know, the origins don't need to be fleshed out. It's already written in the in the history books. He did it. All right. So I'm just telling you. I'm telling you the good parts. Let me get to the good parts is basically what the movie is trying to do.
I mean, you could get away with that since this is a telling of the story from the wizard, which becomes one of his allies later in the movie. So maybe he's just kind of glossing over the important things just to get to the good stuff. Yeah. So you could be saying the movie's doing that, but I don't think the movie is doing that. I think they're just, we don't need to explain that. Just move on to the next scene.
No, I think what the film really tries to do, and I guess what it did successfully was, look, it's Arnold. We got Arnold. He's big. He looks like the guy, all right? Like, look how big. It's just like in the movie. It's like, look how big this guy is. And that's the draw. Whereas Jason Momoa, like, yeah, he's a big guy. But like an audience today is like, you're not just going to skip past this part. You're gonna have to give
Yeah.
me something to hook me on the film. And I think the remake did a good job of having a good hook on the front end.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I think the remake does a much better job of just setting up like Conan for like, you know his enemy, you know Conan, you know where both of them come from, and you know where they want to go. So the foundation of the remake is a lot stronger than the original. Where I was just like, I didn't even know he wanted vengeance in the beginning. I was just like, I don't know. He seems to enjoy being a gladiator and banging randoms. So maybe that's his goal in life.
What is best in life? Crush your enemies,
Exactly, what is
see
best
them
in
driven
life.
before you, and hear the lamentations of the women. It's like, wow, that's what's best, I guess.
Exactly. It wasn't like I need to get vengeance for my parents that were killed. Did you know my mom? She was pretty hot.
I think it's just like all these set pieces to like, like those cool vans back in the 80s with like all the Valhalla and Vikings and stuff. Like, it's all set pieces. Like, look at Arnold in his throne with the helmet, and it's like, what's best in life? Like, it's cool, man. I don't care how it happened. What I think the original does do better, or kind of at this portion of it, is it does a better job with the supporting cast, I think, than the remake does. There's some differences, so we'll have to work around this a little bit. But he gets introduced to sort of his main ally in the films, and in the original, it's Subutai, played by Jerry Lopez. And in the remake, it's Artis, played by Nonso Anozie. And this is where I think the films start to differentiate themselves. I just feel like we get so much more time with the allies in the original film than we do in the remake. And it starts with Subutai, who's there for a lot of the adventuring throughout the film, whereas Artis, it looks like this guy's going to be pretty important and be in a lot of scenes in this film. Like when they first start out, they free a slave colony as opposed to Arnold being freed, so there's a huge difference there. And they're the same guys. Like, they saved this sort of village, and the slaves are like, well, what do we do now? And he's like, well, I'm going to pick up these two hot chicks and we're going to drink a bunch, buddy. So you've got this awesome artist character who's like telling these great stories. Yeah. So then Conan like knocked this guy out, and then I showed up, and like and they're a great pair. And then he just stays on the boat through most of the adventuring, because Conan's like, no, I got to do it myself. He's like, no, you don't, buddy. I don't get it. Like, why would you take that character out of the film so much?
Yeah, even when he comes back later, it's just his part is so minimal. You could have just not had him come back at all. It's a bummer because, yeah, like you said, he definitely seemed like, not exactly, but pretty close to being an equal with Conan. And they definitely seemed like buddy. And so, I would love to see those two guys go on an adventure. It seems like it'd be pretty fun, but for some reason, Conan needs to do it by himself, which is okay, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but the original film gives him the space to do that as well. And I think that what works a lot in the original film is Conan is a one-dimensional character. I mean, we've clearly established that. And I like the buddies. It gives you some different guys. Like you said, they got different gods and different philosophies on life, and they help each other out in the pinch, and it gives you somebody else to root for or like look out for. Mm-hmm. Whereas the movie in the remake becomes like mostly Jason Momoa's Conan the Barbarian for a significant amount of time before we get back to a previously established character or to a new character in the film. And it just, to me, feels like a little squandered, because I started to get kind of bored with the one-note aspect of him. And I wish that there was more of the buddy stuff, because I remember liking that part about the original.
I think the problem with the Conan character in general is he's kind of like Superman. He's not going to die. So having those allies with him, the stakes are raised, because, like, well, I don't know if Subutai is going to live. I don't know if Valeria is going to live. Spoilers.
Yeah.
And Conan, Artis, he could have been that.
Right.
He could have been that really fun guy and be like, man, I hope Artis doesn't die. But you don't have to worry about Artis, because he's gone in the whole movie, so you never have to worry about him. Even when Conan gets more allies in the remake, they leave pretty quickly too, and it's not like you spend as much time with them as you do with the allies in the original, so you're more invested in those allies, as opposed to the ones of the remake who are pretty much there and then they do the thing and then they're gone. So there's not much of a connection you have to them, and if you lose them, you lose them, but you didn't spend a lot of time with them as opposed to the original. You're spending a lot of time with these side characters, and you do feel their loss if it happens.
Yeah,
when it happens.
yeah, and the movie allows space for someone else to be the hero. There's times where like Conan's down and out in a fight, and then Valeria will show up, or Subutai will perfectly timed arrow, and it's like, oh, sick, Subutai's there. What should be the movie's biggest weakness, as you described, is like at this point, James Earl Jones isn't even in these parts of the film, but like I like these little side adventures, and they're dressing up like cultists and like getting intel and trying to figure out things, and it's like it's not really cohesive because a lot of weird stuff happens in between, like a lot of weird stuff. But I think I like the episodic sort of nature of it because there's other characters that are getting introduced throughout the film, whereas the remake sets the stage, gives you an artist type character, and it says, but you guys are here for Conan, and it's like, yeah, I am, but like the tales and like epic tales usually involve multiple characters.
I do like that about the original, that we do get a bunch of like not only like supporting characters, but about like they're very unique, and they all have like their specific thing that they're very good at. Valeria's very good at fighting. Subutai is sort of this I don't know, he's kind of a thief, but he's also kind of like you said, he's good shooting the arrows and stuff. Then we have the wizard too, who has his own things. As opposed to the remake, where it's just like we got this guy, I guess he could kind of pick locks. We don't even know what his buddy artist can do. We never see him do anything in the action sequences. So I like that in the original, but I know I'm going to be thinking too hard about it, but the thing I don't like is just like, as soon as they met in the original, it's like, okay, I guess we're allies now. It's like, all right, can you help me? Free me? Sure. We're best friends. It's like, hey, Valeria, are you going to break in? We're going to break in. Buddies? Buddies now. It's like, it's a little, you know.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think the remake does a little bit of that as well, because, you know, we're making the Subutai artist connection because of the friendship part of it. You know, there's this character in the remake, Ella Shan, who is more like Subutai, but I'm not even making the Subutai connection because he's not in the film very long at all.
His cameo is kind of pointless. Like, if you think about it. I'm going to go there. So Conan he frees him because...
Reasons.
He frees him, and he's like, if you ever are here, look for me, and I'll help you out. So eventually Conan does, and then he uses him to break into Zim's palace because he's looking for the love interest, who we haven't gotten to yet. But he's looking for her. And then after this action sequence with this sea creature, we find out that they're actually not in the palace, that they have to go to the cave. So it's like, okay, that was kind of pointless. Well, I'm going to go. Yeah, I don't need you. There's no locks in the cave. So it's like his whole reason for being in the movie, breaking into this palace, they didn't even need to break into. Yeah. Pretty pointless.
So, I mean, I think you've come back to sort of this common theme that, like, let's gloss over the fact that you shouldn't trust anybody in this world, but like they're best of friends immediately. I prefer, because at least when they go to do something, it sort of goes somewhere. Whereas like the remake allows itself to, you know, they go to sea and to free this one guy who we're going to bring back like 5 scenes from now. Maybe more, honestly. Like, you don't see that character again for 30 minutes, and then he's supposed to be a central kind of character to advancing the plot, and that's a strange choice, I think. So I prefer the consistency of these characters, and I do feel a connection to them because they are in all these adventures, whereas like artists who I liked immediately, but then get shelved, and it's like, well, that, like I said, that's a bummer. And then Elishad, who, okay, maybe he can pick up the slack, but then he's gone most of the movie, and we're forced to kind of be thrust into, I guess we can talk about this because we're going to bring up the Valeria character, but like they just kind of force this like love story on you with this person who I don't know who the hell she is.
So we can get into the female leads of both of the films. Like you said, we have Valeria in the original, portrayed by Sandal Bergman.
Let us take the world by the throat and make it give us what we desire.
And then we have Tamara, portrayed by Rachel Nicholas.
Allah raises the souls of the unspeakably evil.
Very different characters. Both pretty much the love interest to Conan. in both films, which we see through sex scenes in
Oh,
both
boy.
movies. So Valeria is pretty much like this Amazonian warrior type, and then we have Tamara, who's just pure blood descendant.
Yeah.
That's kind of pretty much your damsel in distress.
Yeah, I mean, like the best you could say for her is like maybe like a priestess, maybe like an oracle, some sort of devotee to whatever her god may be, and
But she never brings up like the gods.
No,
ever,
she
and
actively
you
denies
never
it.
learn. Yeah, I wouldn't even give her that.
most of her time is trying to pretend like she's not the pure blood. I think it was Aragon. I don't remember, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's like you said, like they do this pivot on the bad guy where it's like, all right, I want the skull piece, but I also need this, because to me it felt like they need an excuse for like Rose McGowan to continue to be in the film. I guess it's cool that she can smell out like a pure blood person from magic miles away. Like I don't know.
She could smell them out, but she needs to taste it in order to know that's the pure blood.
I think it's just not a great introduction to the character, you know, and they want you to sort of immediately care about this plot point that, you know, I think that there was a better way to get there, whether like maybe Conan got there first randomly, like I'll allow randomness in a Conan movie, and he got to know her before this happened, but like, he's just like, who are you, while they're in the middle of a chase scene, and next thing you know, like, all right, this is the chick. Like, I'm confused.
Well, he was initially going to use her for bait.
Yeah.
Because he's like, wait a minute, they want you, so I'm going to use you. And then he kind of had her tied up. And eventually it does bring out Zim. So that's kind of why he was initially using her. It wasn't that connection at first. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I do appreciate that. I just, like, the Valeria to me gets into the action a little bit more than we see from her. Like, I'll give that the sort of pure blood character in the remake does a little bit of fighting as well. So I'll give her some credit there, but there's never that sustained character that you see from like the original films. Like those guys are constantly getting into shenanigans together.
Yeah, I like the Valeria character better than Tamara, just because Valeria, like, she has her own agency, I guess we could say. She's a very strong character. She doesn't necessarily need Conan. They also have sort of a convoluted love story between them that just sort of happens. Hey, we're rich now. We should bang. Yeah. It's like, it came out of nowhere. But, you know, whatever. It's Conan, sure. They take a little more time in the remake before they bang, but they still bang. So, do with that with what you will. I guess if I had to choose between the woman that's like a strong warrior and she can kind of handle herself versus the one that's kind of knows how to fight but not really and really does need Conan, I'd just pick the warrior, the stronger female character.
Yeah, I mean, these characters in the original help Conan. Like, they actually help Conan. Not like, oh, you're just happening. Okay. Like, they help him. They break into places. When he's about to die on the Tree of Woe, you know, they, like, in this absolutely insane scene that I am completely in love with.
You were talking about when he bites the vulture that's pecking at him?
That part's cool when he bites the vulture, but then when like the like 80s like zombie, I mean not zombies, but like the 80s skeleton neon guys try to take him into the underworld. I'm a big fan of that shit.
It reminded me of Ghost, you know, when you would die and you'd have to go to hell and the shadows came to life. Anyway, but to your point, obviously Conan does die in the original, and without those allies, he would not have come back. So they are very helpful to Conan in that original film, as opposed to the remake. Like I said, you got that one guy who could pick the locks, didn't need him because we didn't go to the cave. His one buddy just stays on the boat. This priestess, I guess we'll call it the pure blood. Does she do anything really to help Conan? No, she's kind of the damsel in distress the whole time that he has to protect. So, yeah, points to the allies in the original.
Yeah, and she becomes more of a damsel in distress as time goes on. Whereas Valeria saves Conan twice, whether it's getting him off the Tree of Woe and, you know, protecting him from the Grim Reaper or whatever the equivalent is in this universe. And when he's about to get his ass kicked again and she's already dead. Spoilers.
Yeah. She force ghosts herself to deflect a blade.
In a bitch in a Valkyrie outfit.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. Nice and shiny and sparkly. It's pretty badass. I don't know how that happened.
Don't care.
But it happened. I guess, yeah, sure.
Again, like the whole thing just feels like one of these characters like Super Tire, like I forget who's actually doing the voiceover, but like he's hammering at the pub. He's like, yeah, then Conan's about to get killed, and then Valeria shows up, even though she was dead, and they're like, okay.
Okay. It's like, can she come back longer? Can we bang again? It's like Conan's like, it's like there's so many things that just aren't explained, but I guess you just kind of go, it's Conan. It doesn't need explanation. I guess.
It is kind of like the Superman effect. It's like, don't care, plot, no, get out of the way. Like he banged this witch and he threw her in the fire, and then he punched this guy, and you know,
We didn't even talk about the witch, yeah.
yeah. I guess her equivalent would be the daughter character. The witch in the original film is important in a sense. She tells him kind of where to go next, and then she gets tossed.
Kind of tells him where to go, yeah.
She gets tossed in the fire, like any other character that is not Conan. Wasting my time. Get out of the way. Let's see some boobs and fights, bro. Like it doesn't matter how we got there, but
Yeah, you got the best of both worlds with her. You got your sex scene and you got your action sequence all in one with the witch in the original.
So, but no, I mean, really to sort of round this out is that I preferred the Allies because I think, although we had a good foundation in this remake with all this stuff that they set up, Jason Momoa is not really an angry guy, so he's nothing like himself as a kid. It doesn't really matter that he was a kid at any point anyway, because like he fights completely different than he did as a kid.
Yeah.
So it's just like, all right, cool. Like you had this relationship with your dad, and you got some friends here and there, but I don't know. It's just not consistent in a way that if they had kept going in that route, I think I would have enjoyed that portion, sort of the setup till we get back to the big bad again. I think I would have enjoyed that more. Whereas in the original, I did enjoy it because I was constantly meeting a cast of characters that were all weird and different. And one guy's going to do like an ancient ritual to bring you back from the dead. One chick's going to like knock out a bunch of people. Subutai is going to show up just when you need him. Like they serve the purpose, and I appreciated that.
Kind of going back to what you said, and I kind of touched upon it earlier, like the consistency of the Conan character in the remake. You have this really violent kid that, you know, you think he'd be even more violent after watching his dad die, but then he's kind of laid back. He's a fun guy to hang out with. Yeah, it's like, hey man, I do want to drink with that guy. Yeah, he seems like a really cool guy, and I think that was definitely the wrong direction to go in the remake. I think he should have been kind of more like the Arnold Conan, who didn't talk a lot. I think mostly because Arnold's accent was just so thick that they were just like, let's give him as few lines as possible. He looked good, huh? But I just think it was a mistake to make him so relatable.
Yeah.
In the beginning of his adventure as an adult. I think a better thing to do with that remake is make him cold, make him like not liking people, and then you introduce these allies that sort of, you know, open him up to the world and just open him up to connection with other people, and then like through that connection he's able to like overcome the evil guy that killed his dad, because he finally wasn't that fire anymore. He cooled down a little bit, you know, and I think that would have been a smarter way to go, as opposed to already having, hey, I'm a pretty cool guy in the beginning, huh? And we're just going to go on a fun adventure because I'm Jason Momoa. Yeah, I just didn't like exactly that portrayal 100%. And then you have Conan, portrayed by Schwarzenegger. Like I said, he didn't talk a lot.
Right.
Because of the accent. But, like, it makes sense, though. I mean, he was a slave for 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't think he was allowed to talk at all while he was pushing that wheel. He was like, hey, how was your day yesterday pushing the wheel? It's not like he was able to have those conversations. So it makes sense that he's sort of, like, weird.
Yeah.
And he is a weird dude. He doesn't talk a lot. Like, a lot of... Arnold has to do a lot of facial expression acting in this movie, and it's like his first really big movie, so it's like awkward as shit. But it makes sense because this guy was a slave. So even though it's mostly because Arnold's this inexperienced actor, it actually plays well to who that character is and just what he's been through his whole life. So yeah, he would be like that as an adult, this weird, standoffish but brooding guy, as opposed to the cool guy that we get in the remake, who I didn't really care for to have. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it. Like I said, the consistency was there, and then it just sort of falls off. And I think you're right. Like his father mentions that he has to earn the sword, and like he hadn't earned the sword yet because of all that fire. And I think you're right. Like if you had this period where, as he was doing his travels, he was more of a hothead and like ran into things and needed help sometimes because he forgot himself and then eventually learned that trait, I think it would have been, like you said, a better scenario. Whereas they make him this superhuman kid all throughout like the first like kind of first third of the film, and then he's like more vulnerable than you would think for as incredible as they made him, and it's just like it felt like there was a disconnect. Like where was that battle born, constant like brick house? Yeah. I'm kicking ass that you do get from like an Arnold. Where it's like it doesn't matter what I'm gonna say, I'm gonna beat you up.
yeah. So I know it sounds like we're rereading it, but just missed opportunity.
Exactly.
I'll just end with that.
Exactly. Like I said, it was built on very good foundation. So to see them sort of squander some of that, it felt like a missed opportunity, which allowed space for this original film, which it's kind of just a random assortment of things, but like they're all kind of awesome. So, in the aggregate, it works because you kind of care about this band of characters, not just Conan. So I think it helped them to spread out the cast a little bit more.
Where should we go from here? Should we keep talking about Conan? Talk about any of the plot points, or should we go to the ending? I know you wanted to talk about the action. We could go there.
Yeah, and with us talking about consistency, I think one of the characters of the film, really, probably maybe the main character of both films, are the action. And I did want to sort of talk about the differences between the action and the original and the remake. The original, like I said, you never really know what to expect because the action has no real logic to it in a sense. Like you might be wandering through a village, run into a witch, and like you said, 1 minute it's a sex scene, the next minute you're throwing her into a flaming pyre. 1 minute you're pretending to be a cultist, and you're like that interaction he had with the guy when Arnold gets his cult uniform. I'm like,
right, yeah. I was like, is Arnold going to have to blow this guy? Oh, my God.
I'm like, all right, so Arnold's trying to, like, have gay sex with a guy.
Just to sneak in.
And it's like, or like we said, like the scene that reminds you of Ghost. Or when he becomes a snake. And, like, that to me is, like, the definition of that film, where it's wildly inconsistent, but really fun. And, like, you don't know what's going to happen scene to scene. And I think this kind of goes back into the Allied conversation as well. I think where the remake lost me a little bit was that, I knew what was going to happen scene to scene.
Yeah.
Because they did set the tone. But like that film is a lot more consistently over the top violent in a way that I think it actually would have served that film to have a little bit more variation and nuance like you saw in the original film. Which, yes, it was weird and crazy, but like it was a tone and a vibe, whereas this was just like bloodlust. I'm gonna kill this guy and I'm gonna stick my finger in this guy's nose, and which gross. I didn't like that very much at all.
Yeah,
but like the movie was always going to show you like the violence. Like I splattered this guy's brain, or I chopped this guy's head off, or or my dad got molten lava basically on his head. And I just wish that it switched it up a little bit, because the film, I appreciate it because Conan, yes, it's a violent story about like a violent guy, but I think that's not really like the main hook for me. So I think I would have preferred some more subtlety or nuance in the violence. I think.
I get what you're saying. I think the original, to your point, definitely kept you on your toes more because you didn't know when the action sequence was coming. Which is good because it's like, oh, this is exciting. But like you said, because sometimes you just have no idea what the fuck is happening in this original movie. So okay, there's an action sequence now. I guess all right, that guy turned into a snake for reasons. Sure, why not? But I definitely didn't see a lot of that stuff coming. So I'll give you points there. Original movie. The remake definitely not only has more action sequences. Obviously the fight choreography is a lot better,
sure.
a lot tighter. You could see like in the original, like when they like slash a sword at somebody's not even close and the other guy's just like faking it. It's like, okay, it's the 80s, they can't get away with a lot of that stuff. They can't fix it in post like you can in the remake. So it's expected when you see an 80s film like that. And yeah, it is a little bit predictable in the remake. At least the
Right.
outcome of each action sequence, like, okay, well, nobody's gonna die here. We're only an
Right.
hour in, so it was just having an action sequence for the sake of having an action sequence, which the remake does a lot. I do get exhausted when there's a lot of action sequences, kind of one after another. So I do kind of check out mentally. It might seem cool, like at first, like the setup. Like I think my favorite action sequence in the remake was the first time Zim fights Conan and his daughter's there, and then he's got Tamara like sort of chained up, and then you got this like sand people kind of battle. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was kind of innovative. All of these guys are made out of sand. Like, how can he hurt them? What's going to happen? It's a cool idea. It sort of just fizzles out at the end,
Right.
Which is a bit of a letdown. But it was still kind of a cool action sequence. But then there's sort of another one that happens kind of right after. So it's like it's a little exhausting for me on the action. So I think kind of like what we said with what was that? Fucking Olympus one.
Clash of Titans.
What the hell? Oh, yeah, fuck.
Yeah.
Olympus. Yeah, like we said with Clash of the Titans, there's more action sequences. They surely look better, but there's not as much invested because there's so many, and you kind of know what's going to happen stake-wise. You're not going to really lose anybody unless it's the sequence at the end where maybe somebody could die, but probably not.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I thought that it was visually, it was a very cool scene. It was well choreographed, but honestly, even at that point, I was already starting to check out because I'm like, all right, wait a minute, what just happened with the carriage and the guys, and like, there's just so much that went into that sort of moment. It was a cool sequence. But I'm like, look at this freaking the sand guy. Like, oh, now they're doing flips and stuff. Like, I started checking out, and what would otherwise have been a really cool sequence, I think I would have been like talking highly about, but just that one note sort of action just started to wear on me a little early in the film, which is a bit of a shame because, like you said, I think part of what we were talking about before, where if his buddy was there, if like Artist was there, if there was some stakes there that some chess piece was on the field that, oh, maybe we are going to lose this, or even someone else interfering, like in that moment where he was losing and the battle was lost, instead of him just sort of creating an explosion, like maybe his buddy bails him out. I don't know, like if we would have done a little bit more of that, I think I would have had more fun with the action. Even you brought up Clash of Titans, even that, which got pretty dumb and pointless over time. There were some characters that were like, oh wow, like this guy's made of like, I forgot what it was, but he was like some wood robot thing, like, or.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, the weird magician guy. That was weird.
Like, all right, like it's not great, but at least it's different.
Yeah, I think it could have definitely helped the remake to have these more allies that would not only like just change things up a little bit, but sort of introduce us more to more elements of the Conan world. Like, okay, maybe that guy is like a magician. Okay, so now I'm learning more about the magic in this world. So it would have been good in many ways to just introduce these different allies, which the remake really doesn't do.
That's a great point you're bringing up there. That, yes, I guess there's more elements because now we learned about this pure blood thing, but like the original will just throw anything at you and you just have to accept it. Like we said, you might, I've said it several times already, but like you might just run into a witch in a hut. Your friend might become a Valkyrie after she's dead. You might get tied to a tree of woe, and then spirits come to get you. So like everyone's random stuff is like legit, even if like Conan's the best. Like, oh no, that magic clearly has a purpose and means something. Whereas like in this, yeah, you introduce this other character, but really it's just to get her blood to start the stupid ritual with a squiggly mask or something. And then I don't know, like give me a little bit more about the mask, I guess, or like maybe there should have been a scene with a display of his dead wife's power. Like give me something that. Why is this important? Because I don't really get it.
That's one big problem with the remake. It's like, as opposed to the original, we see Doom turn into a snake at least. So okay, that guy has powers. We never get to see the power of Zim. Like, what? How what powers is he trying to acquire? What power does he have? Like, why is he the king? Like, why is this guy in charge? Like, okay, that guy turned into a snake. That's a little fucking weird. You got a weird mask. That's all I got going with you. And you got a weird daughter that kind of wants to bang you.
Right. Yeah, that comes up quite a bit in the film, doesn't it? but yeah, like, the daughter is what's impressive in that scene. She made people out of sand that are kicking Conan's ass. And, you know, like, that's pretty impressive. So, like you said, the big bad needs an example of his power that's not just, I tricked you while we were in a sword fight, which is kind of like what most of it is. Like, James Earl Jones becomes a snake. Yeah, it's stupid and pointless, but he became a snake. He threw like a snake spear at someone, like snake arrows. Like, it's all
snake arrows.
It's all.
And we saw a demonstration of his power, fall. Come here, my child. Come here. Yeah. So you see lots of demonstrations of his power. Don't really get that in the remake with this. You see demonstrations of his daughter's power. Maybe she should be.
Yeah, maybe. Charge. You know, she gets kind of that dream squash, and he's like, you're not like your mother. And it's like, it's kind of the point, dude.
Just put your thumb in my mouth, Daddy. Yeah. Oh God,
we're going there, aren't we? It was strange. Even like when they shoot his little buddy like from the catapult into his boat thing, and they're both in the bed, and I'm just like,
they're both in the bed
together.
Like, it's like, well,
what do we do?
What did she sleep at the foot of his bed like a dog or something?
It was just weird. That's the thing. It's like you got Jason Momoa who's able to pull off a lot of this cool choreography. Like you said, that sand fight scene is actually really cool. It just unfortunately shoehorned between a bunch of other things, like the carriage that just blows up because like the wheels fell off. Like I don't know. I just got confused and sort of bored at times with things that were clearly supposed to be fun action.
That's fair. That makes sense. Like I said, like if there's too many action sequences, I do get exhausted. But in all fairness, the original, for me, definitely dragged on at a lot of points in the movie. I was kind of surprised because I thought it was going to be this huge action movie that's like action, and like you said, it's not. And there's a lot of parts in the movie which there's not even anything happening. It's just you just hear the score. And then there's just kind of people moving and talking, but you don't hear what they're talking about because you just hear the music. So there's a lot of moments like that in the original, and it definitely drags on a lot. I mean, this is a 2-hour plus movie. I felt that time for sure.
It's that's legitimate. There are scenes that just they don't go anywhere. They don't lead anywhere. I mean, even again, I know I've brought this scene up a lot, but even like the witch thing, like, you should go there. It's like, okay, I'll go there. Like, he could have just gone there because we didn't know where he was in the first place.
He could have just showed up randomly and we would have accepted it because, hey, we've been accepting everything else happening in the movie so far. So, but no, let's give him one more sequence to bang this chick, and then she's randomly going to have fangs and try to eat him, but that's okay. He'll throw in the fire and he'll still stay. I love how he still stayed the night there. He wakes up the next morning. Like,
it was so random. He just like, all right, that was weird.
I guess this is my bed now.
Because you're right. That is, it should be like all the things that are wrong with the film. They're like, all right, so we're in fifth gear with the witch, and now let's go back into second. And you're just going to kind of walk around the field and look around. That's pretty good, dude. And the next thing you know, you like happen across the cult, and you're like, "Hey, what's going on?" And it's like,
"This is pretty cool. This cult, check out my medallion. I can go in. It's like his VIP pass at a concert. I can go in, right? Oh, I guess he's got the medallion. There's nowhere else. No other way he could have gotten there."
Hey, I've never seen a large Austrian guy before, but yeah, you're right. It goes down a lot of different winding pathways that are not really connected to each other, but it's all just like you said, it's all the scenery. Like, it doesn't matter what the guys are saying. Play the epic music, and it's just like,
I mean, great soundtrack. I liked it, but it's like, you got a 2-hour movie here. It's like, let's move along. Come on.
It's like you say, after the witch scene, when he's walking around, like the score is still doing the same thing as if he was in a sword fight to the death. Just like walking around, looking at stuff, dun dun. And there's my friend Subtai. Dun 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 dun. Climbing a snake tower. Dun 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 dun.
Great score.
Yeah.
Great score.
Yeah.
It didn't always match what was happening on the screen, though.
I think to be honest, probably every time I watch Conan the Barbarian, I'm probably at least a few pops in. So I just kind of like I just let it wash over me. Like that's how the film feels to me. Whereas to be fair, it's the same thing that happened in a remake where there was so much action at a certain point that I just like I got desensitized to it and just like started letting it wash over me. It's like, all right, when are we going to get to the next part? And I think I don't know if we want to go to the ending, but
yeah. I got nothing else to talk about. We can go there.
yeah. Like when you're looking at the ending of the remake, and again, it does come back to really my biggest gripe with the film, which is the allies. All right, you've got the love interest who's been captured. I don't even really have to get into how she got captured. she
I don't remember.
She was exactly. And they've got her like connected to this weird wheel thing. So
sure, I mean there was a wheel in the original, so there got to be a wheel in the remake,
yep,
right?
And her blood makes the weird mass slimy and alive. Okay. And then Conan, again, just like in the original film, shows up like in a cloak. So I guess he's supposed to be here. And what the biggest sin to me here is that they just reduce the love interest into she's tied up and screaming throughout this entire sequence. So like she's not doing anything, and it's just like, wow, you've reduced this character who at one point you're like, hey, get out of these priestess clothes and put on some, some armor. And even when she's tied up, they give her a dagger. So it's like, okay, she's capable, and they just, she's tied up and there's nothing she can do.
Yeah, that's why I said I like Valeria more than her, because like ultimately she's just our damsel in distress. They might give her some strong moments, but ultimately she's just you have to save her. That's her whole purpose of being in the movie.
And to be fair, because we talked about the daughter a little bit, Rose McGowan witch, but the scene where she basically is trying to talk to her father, she's like, well, what if the ritual doesn't work? He's like, no, it must work. It will work. And she's like, well, I'm pretty powerful too. Like, the movie should be more confident in its choices. It's like we shouldn't be debating whether her magic's going to work or not, because I think it sort of undercut the whole thing. I'm glad that the magic worked, that we've seen her power and it's powerful. I think there's a different way to say that she wasn't her mother than to like undermine like the whole hinge point of the film is that this magic is powerful. Whereas like the original was just, this is happening, that's happening. Just take it, and like in those little moments that really don't amount to much, but they undercut these characters. So again, in a movie where a lot of the characters aren't in it, that feels like the constant theme. It's like, here's Artist and there's Artist. Here's the love interest. She's got a sword and she's tied up. Here's the big bad witch and she's making sand people and she's not confident and basically has crazy daddy issues. And it's just like, make them tough, make them like, just make it fucking metal. Like the movie started metal. It's like, I'm born of blood and steel and kick this guy's ass and kill that guy and drop some heads and I'm sticking my finger in your nose and I'm kicking this guy's ass. And then it's just like, man, let's just kind of ease into the final moments of the film. And it's just like, stick with it. Tone, I just felt like that ending sequence, like, yeah, it did what it was supposed to do. Like he's in a fight with the bad guy and there's a struggle and the mask is giving him powers and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the main sort of love interest is on this thing that falls down and they're fighting on the thing while she's tied up and screaming. And she eventually gets free and he's like, run away. And like, that's her contribution to the rest of this scene. And they have just another generic sword fight. It's like, do more.
Yeah, compared to the earlier action sequences, I mean, bringing it up again, the Sand People one, that was innovative in a way. I hadn't seen that too many times. Maybe Spider-Man, but I don't really see people made out of sand too often in movies, so that was cool. Yeah, incorporate a little bit more of that magic, or maybe that power that he's getting from the mask. Maybe show us a little more of that. Like I said, I had a problem with Zim because I don't really know the powers. That would have been perfect opportunity to show off the full range of his powers at the very end. And that, the stronger he is, then the better our hero is for overcoming him. So it's a disservice to Zim and Conan to really not do much more than a sword fight.
because Zim's sort of like allies throughout the film, who I guess are a little bit more defined than really Conan's allies in the films, like the guy with the nose missing, who's running the prison. Like we sort of know more about him through the way he's treating his prisoners. We know that the one guy they basically catapult, like he was important because he never fails, and he actually did pull it off, even though he got killed. Like they got her back, and it's like you got all these scenes with like these crazy action sequences in the beginning of the film with the sand people, with the guys stuck in the cage and weird tentacle monsters there, whatever that was.
Sure, the Kraken, why not?
And it's like, all right, so we've gone sand people, we've gone Krakens, we've gone like crazy like egg axe fights in the woods, and then at the end it's like, no, she's falling, okay, and ching ting, run away, and then it's like, what? Like you gave this guy this like magic mask, like let him shoot some beams or something. Like what are we doing? Like pick it up. Whereas to be fair, and I'm fair. The ending of the original film is about as anticlimactic of an ending as you can get.
It's pretty underwhelming. Are you gonna just start where like after that amazing action sequence where he sets up all the traps? Yeah, so he's kind of rigged all these traps, kind of where he was resurrected, kind of Home Alone style. He set up all these traps, taking out Doom's like a bunch of his soldiers and his two right-hand men. I don't know the characters' names, but pretty much takes them out. And like you said, Valeria makes a Jedi ghost appearance here and is able to save Conan. And after that, it's like, okay, now here it is, Conan versus Doom. Mano a mano. Yep. These two guys, this is what we've been waiting for the whole movie. This guy that killed his mom right when he's there. This guy Conan, we know he's a badass. Oh, can't wait to see what happens. And pretty much just talk.
Yeah.
It's pretty much just talking. And then Conan's like, nah, I'm just going to cut your head off. And then that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it, man.
And it's like, here's the head, and toss it down. All the cults guys are like, "Nah, man." You're like,
man. I guess I got to go back to my work at like 7-Eleven or something. I don't know, man.
They throw all their little cult flames into the water, and they're just like, let's disperse.
And then Conan throws like a thing of fire into like towards the top of the palace and like totally misses, but somehow it still lights on fire.
I know.
He clearly misses. Wasn't anywhere near it. And so like I was watching it with my wife, and she's like, "How did that catch on fire? It wasn't anywhere near it." Just let the Conan experience happen.
Exactly. And then the best ending of all after that, and Conan went on to have many more fights and do many more things, and surely that tale will be told too. It's like, go watch the sequel, because we definitely like earned it. It didn't make it. It's just a picture of Arnold with a screen crawl.
I don't think it is a picture.
I think you're right.
I think it's just him just sitting there, and they filmed it, and they just panned out.
Oh yeah, it's just like he's got beard now, he's bigger, and it's just like, and it's just like Conan is still fucking best, and if you don't think so, you suck. And I was there, man. I saw it, and although it was a generic sword fight in the remake, they had the fight.
They had the fight at least. At least there was like, okay, yeah, here I am to redeem, my dad who you killed. And I suppose the original was just like, I am your father. It was like, whoa, wait, what? Have fucking Darth Vader talking again? What's going on here? He's like, I made you, so you must thank me. He's like, maybe I should thank him. No, I'm not. Yeah. Just cut his head off.
I think this is being way too generous and like way too generous to the film, but I think it sort of underscores this idea that, like, at any given time, like, you might have the right tool for the situation, but you just also might not. So it's like, there are times where turning into a snake and, like, shooting snake arrows is going to work, but then there's other times where, like, you're just going to get your head cut off. Like, sometimes Conan's going to kick people's asses, or he'll be stuck to the tree of woe and have to be like resurrected. So there's a weird bit of fairness to that universe that, yes, a witch can do crazy witch shit, but you just kind of toss them in a fire. So like that works. Everyone is flawed and has weaknesses in some way. But I think why we like the allies in the film is because you can kind of shore it up with, if this one can show up here and I can do a little bit here, we can kind of get it done. In the remake, it's singular. The man born of battle is going to be the one that gets it done. And like both films are literally doing that. But there's a little bit more to it, and it seems in the weird inconsistencies of the first film, there is strangely some sort of cohesive universe that was built. Whereas I don't know about this pure blood thing. I don't know about this mask. I don't know how the magic works. I don't know. It's true about both films, but like, why am I thinking about it more in this remake? I haven't been able to answer that question for myself.
I think it's probably just because it was set up so well, the remake, and then it didn't stick to what it sort of set up for itself. And then you're just kind of like, well, what about this?
Right.
And what about this? And then the original is just like, I don't know what the fuck's happening, and I still don't know what's happening. So okay, so yeah, it's consistent in its sort of inconsistencies, so it's okay, as opposed to the remake where it's like, well, these are kind of the rules, but probably not. We'll change them down the line. Don't worry. So I get what you mean there about the original, just sort of knowing its world better and playing by its own rules more, as opposed to the original, where it's just like. As opposed to the remake, where it's just like, maybe we'll do that, or we probably won't address that again. It's
unfair, but it's unfair because the film itself set itself up to be grounded in a bit of realism. Completely unreal, but like, yes, this is how this universe kind of works, and then it just kind of flips. Like, he's this angry, bloodlust killer, and then he's kind of like a mellow guy that can kick most people's asses, but sometimes he can't. It's like the original film, he was a slave, and now he's not, and now he's big, and but like because you set that tone that I have no idea what's going to happen from scene to scene, that I'm just allowing it to happen. I don't know, like all that foundation work that they put into the remake, if they just stuck with it, they really had something there. It was there. It was right there for them to say. I know you mentioned before the synopsis that there were multiple screenwriters. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. It's like,
yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
there's like 3 different names on the script, and it's like, how do you put that many?
Yeah, it's true. It's like such a simple plot. It's like, do we need 3 writers? It's probably writer, rewrite, rewrite.
Right.
So it's probably most likely 2 rewrites as opposed to 3 guys trying to figure out one plot.
I think the studio, maybe like around the time like the nose thing, they were like, all right, wait a minute, let's pull it back a little bit, because at the same time, you need people to like Jason Momoa. And there wasn't really any action that Arnold Schwarzenegger was doing that would make you say, oh, I don't like this Conan. But there were, there is a tipping point that I think they could have had the Momoa Conan fall into because of just how intense his sort of bloodlust is, and maybe they were trying to balance that. And I think in trying to strike that chord, they may have overshot that.
Yeah, I get that. Trying to not lose the audience, that they sort of backtracked and sort of hurt themselves by doing that instead of sticking with their guns, which would have made it stronger, the story overall.
Yeah, because it's not just like one thing I can point to that says, oh, they shouldn't have done that, they shouldn't have done that. I mean, really, the only real note I have is that the fringe should have mattered more, and I want to give this movie more liberties, and I'm just not, in a way that I'm completely hypocritically allowing for the original film, and I recognize that.
I think I'd see like the original, because I think you like the Allies because like Arnold doesn't really talk a lot, like we said, that thick Austrian accent, so you get a lot more of the Allies kind of the way they're kind of building up, like, oh, they think he's cool, so maybe he is kind of cool. It's like helping you as an audience member, like the way you feel about him, as opposed to the remake where it's like you're just kind of getting Momoa, right. And if you don't exactly like what he's doing, then you're not gonna enjoy the entire ride with him. I guess.
I think that's fair. Yeah, so it feels like we're kind of getting to that part where you say whether the movie should exist or not. So I'll speak more on the original film in that segment as well. So.
All right, but I mean, before we get there, is there anything else you wanted to cover? Any characters, any of the action sequences, anything that stuck out to you in either film? Speak now, forever.
Man, look, man, there wasn't much there. I think we got it.
I got nothing to say. You got nothing to say. So I guess it's it, Reggie. Reggie, should the remake exist?
Right. I'll start by saying this: that even as we're talking, and like I said, the hypocritical line, I recognize that I'm being completely hypocritical here. The original film actually has a lot of movie sins that should be inexcusable. But there might be something to be said about star power, and we've talked about it in the past. That like we knew what we were getting with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like the entire country, the entire world really fell in love with this guy who could barely talk, but was an actor. Honestly, one of the most successful ones that's ever lived. And this just random assortment of things that are kind of Conan related, kind of kick ass because Arnold's there. Just being Arnold. The remake is earnestly trying to tell like a Conan story in a cohesive sort of way. And Jason Momoa, he fits the bill. He's big, he's tough and stuff like that. But they do so many tonal shifts. It's confusing. But I'll say this to kind of wrap it. The remake should exist because that building that they did in the beginning of the film actually mattered, and really the movie I feel like starts to lose its way towards the end. But I've certainly seen worse films. And I think I'm being tough because of the impact that the original Conan film had. This remake was okay, could have been way better and really like cemented its own place, but it is a serviceable Conan film, good lead, decent enough story. I just wish they stuck the landing because they really didn't. But it should exist.
I was really on the fence about this. Like, even coming into this podcast, I was just like, should it exist? Should it not exist? And I was really thinking about it, and it really does go into my feelings about the original film. Like, how was the original film? And, like, did we need more of this or, like, another telling of this? And, like I said, this is my first time watching Conan the Barbarian. So I know it's a cult classic. I know people love it, but I was fucking bored. Majority of that movie, I was just like, wow, nothing is happening. Like I said, there's a lot of scenes where nothing's happening. We just have a score going on. People just walking around town, looking at shit. Sure, why not? We got a 2 hour and 7 minute movie here about Conan the Barbarian. We don't need a 2 hour and 7 minute movie about Conan the Barbarian. I mean, a lot of times I was checking the clock. I was like, how much longer is this movie? I understand it. Like, it's Arnold's first big movie. It's a cult classic. It's like, wow, this is it, man. I thought there would be a lot more action. And, there was a decent amount. It was okay. And there were some good characters in there that I liked. But ultimately, I was just like, when is this movie over? Because it was long. So I was like, if the remake can just get things moving a little bit faster and, just keep me a little more engaged. And like you said, the beginning was pretty strong. I liked the stuff with the young Conan, like how he's just like psycho, able to take out these 4 guys on his own. I thought that was really cool. And it was disappointing to kind of see it just kind of play it a lot safer with that character afterwards. I think if you just kept him like more steel-like and just like harder, and then like as he meets people, then he kind of lightens up and just like learns how to work with people, and because of that he's able to overcome evil. I think that would have been a better film, but that's not here or there. But I just think the action was better, the setup was better. I was able to follow it a little easier because that original was just a little confusing. So I know it's Conan the Barbarian, and I shouldn't be thinking too hard about it. So I'll just end with saying, I'm going to give it a good solid, it should have been made, because at the end of the day, I don't think it really like ruins what happened in the original, because I personally don't think it was that great what happened in the original film. Like, maybe I gotta warm up to it by a few more viewings, but like I said, I was kind of bored, and I do get kind of bored with the action sequences in the remake. But overall, I think I had a little more fun just because it was a little easier for me to follow, even though it's kind of been done before. And you can anticipate what's going to happen at the end of every action sequence. sure, the original kept me guessing, but I was still just like, 2 hours and 7 minutes. That was just the number I had in my head the whole time.
Yeah.
So I'll go with it should have been made, the remake.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what really puts this over the top is probably the same thing that puts the original over the top, the star power. Jason Momoa is able to hold together this kind of flimsy plot. He's likable enough and he fits the bill enough. They probably should have just gone full murder psycho, because I think we would have liked that film a little bit more. Because it's patently ridiculous, but the original is patently ridiculous. And
Yeah.
I think what I kind of like about the original so much is, like, when I watched it, it did do almost everything I didn't expect it to do. You know, I thought that this was going to be like, you know, sword fight, and like all this weird, trippy stuff happens, and like, I think I just like the fact that somehow that exists in the world, and enjoy just how ridiculous it can be. But I don't think that some of the reasons I like the film are why people like the film. And I think that because the remake did more of what you would expect, I don't hold it in as high as regard. But like, you've made a lot of good points as to why there are many things that this remake does better than the original film, even if I do like the original film a little bit more, actually a lot more. But there's a lot of things that I'm allowing myself to forgive to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the original looks good. I mean, the set pieces look great. You know, everything's practical effects, so nothing done in computer. You know, some stop motion with the snakes,
Yeah.
but still looks good, and it does feel. I kind of made fun of the music playing, and that's all we got for like 5 minutes at a time. But like, it does sort of like suck you into the world. Like, now I was bored to some of those points, but I was also sort of like focused in like on the world and that huge score that's playing in the background. So it's interesting. The original Conan, for sure. I didn't understand all of it, but it sure was interesting.
Sure.
The remake's a little more formulaic, a little easier to follow, which could make it boring in its own right. But I think the beginning's strong enough, and like you said, I think Momoa does a serviceable job as Conan. Yeah, I thought it was all right, the remake. So yeah, why not? Let's go with it. Like you said, the original was absurd. Remake's pretty absurd. That definitely, like, you when we were talking about that opening scene about seeing the sword in the womb and the baby could see it, it's just like, yeah. Well, if they just kept going that way, I think it would have been a much more enjoyable film.
Well, you know what's funny about that? Like, you were talking about the director. That's something you would do in a music video. You know, like, that's something that you would just do in a music video. And he's obviously very good at making music videos, and honestly not that bad at making a major length film. Like, Clash of Titans was way worse than this, you know?
Yeah,
so, I mean, there's a win.
Hey! And we both did not think that one should exist, so there you go.
Yeah, so could it be better? Yes, but, like, I think that the heavy investment on that young actor and Ron Perlman early in the film saved this entire experience, because they did such a strong job at the beginning that even when it started to get formulaic and like repetitive, I was still thinking, man, like, how are they going to incorporate that stuff? Because that was great, and I wish they kept that tone throughout. But whatever.
Yeah, solid foundation. Definitely weaker towards the end, but good enough.
Yeah. So it's Wonder Woman. That's gonna get. I'm gonna have to cut that, or we're gonna get.
I liked Wonder Woman.
I liked it
anyway.
too. I liked it too. I didn't like the Ares fight. That's all.
Oh yeah, no. As soon as I always check out during every those CGI fights at the end of all these superhero movies, I don't care. Fuck. All right, cool. So that's what we thought about the movies. Let's think about the next episode, Reggie. What are we gonna do next?
I feel like we haven't gone back to this well. I mean, it's a little similar to this genre, but I think it might be a decent time to revisit a Western.
We got a couple. We got 3:10 to Yuma and the Magnificent Seven. Fine with doing any one of those. I guess if I had to pick, I guess I'd lean more towards 3:10 to Yuma because I'm less familiar with that. I'm sort of
I was
Magnificent Seven.
I was actually leaning towards that film as well. Like, I brought up because just like as I was watching Conan, I was like, you know, this would actually. Just based on sort of what we watched recently with the comedies and the actors and stuff, I was like, it would make sense to do that. And 310 to Yuma to me felt like kind of next thing if we were going to do a Western. So if you're cool with it, I'm cool.
Yeah. All right, sure. Yeah. All right. Next episode, 310 to Yuma then.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching, listening. Let us know what you think. Did you guys agree with us? I know I'm gonna get ripped apart for hating the original so much or saying it was boring, but I only watched it once. I'm sure multiple viewings would warm me up a little bit more. So let me have it in the comments, guys. Or if you agree with me, let me know too.
Have you tried pot?
I was taking serious notes during my watching Reggie. I couldn't do that. But yeah. We're Retro versus Remake. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please, give us that 5-star and a good review. It absolutely help us. If you're on YouTube, if you haven't subscribed, definitely subscribe. Just give us a like, and definitely leave us a comment. Love reading those comments. If you have anything to say, Reggie.
No, just really appreciate you guys listening. I know, be easy on Dan. I think he missed the window. He missed the window on this one. He didn't get it, guys. But no, but
I was so bored. I'm sorry.
No, there's some ridiculously over long scenes in the film, but like I said, the world building is what got me. It's this is gonna be what gets me in trouble. It's like Star Wars. The world buildings, what was good, all the crap in between. See, so now you'll get all the Conan hate. I'll get all the Star Wars hate. And, actually, we should cut all this because we won't have a good iTunes review.
We won't have any audience. That's all our audience is, Star Wars and Conan fans.
No, but I mean, seriously, I just appreciate everyone that's listening. We definitely seen some uptick in like the numbers and the comments and stuff like that. So we're gonna keep making them, and hopefully you keep listening.
Well, thanks again for listening. I'm Dan Bulick.
I'm Reggie Parker.
And this has been another episode of
Retro
versus Remake. Don't see how bad that was.
It's gonna be just as bad as all the other ones.